Hey Girl Up USA gang! And this is LeadHER Voices, the podcast where girls and women ignite change and inspire the future. Brought to you by Girl Up USA, we're here for bold ideas and fearless conversations.
LeadHER Voices is all about bringing women to the forefront in honor of Women's History Month.
And today, we're diving into women in politics, and we're so excited to welcome not one, but two guest speakers, Amanda Hollowell and Megan Irving Tyler. Let's get started. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, Anwita, one of the amazing young women I've gotten to know through the LeadHER Voices program. Anwita, I know you are incredibly busy, and we've discussed your projects with FBLA, Model 9 Nations, and of course, Girl Up USA. What's on the horizon for you in the coming weeks, and what's been on your mind?
Thank you, Siyeon. It's been so great getting to know you and interacting with all the other amazing young women through this program. In the coming weeks, obviously, we're getting closer and closer to AP season, which is freaking me out just a tiny bit. But outside of just like the school stuff, for FBLA, I'm running for state office. By the time everyone sees this, I will know whether or not I got it. And if I do get it, we have like training, you go straight into work. For FBLA, I already work at like a district and a chapter level. So we're just trying to close up the year. My school does a hot wings contest with our FBLA chapter to raise money for the March of Dimes fundraiser. That's a pretty big thing coming up. And especially over the summer, I'm really just looking forward to doing whatever I can to just expand my horizon and work on finding my niche because as like the topic of this is like women in politics, and that's something I'm super interested in, but there's obviously like very specific areas that everyone can focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And reflecting on what is the end of Women's History Month this year and the Lead Her Voices program, what are some takeaways you want to share with any young girls who are currently listening to this episode?
This is the perfect question. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to dive in head first because if you're scared, there's nothing to be scared of because they don't know if this is your first time doing some sort of program, and you don't necessarily need to tell them that. At the end of the day, confidence is what really is going to bring together your resume, what you're doing. Um, I feel like it's so important to not let your anxiety and like your head get in the way of doing things. And it's just that's how I've done everything I do. Tried to talk myself out of it and decided it's not worth it, and I just dive in head first.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with all of that, especially coming from, I know you're a high school sophomore and I'm a senior, but definitely some parallels between that. And I've been there, I've done that, and I can't say that it gets better, but I mean, we all find our thing, we all find our way, and it's awesome to hear that a lot of people listening to this episode can kind of garner that advice and that information as well. And so, of course, it's amazing to hear about your advocacy at a local and a state, a national level, and that's awesome. And before we introduce our guests, I'm curious, why is this podcast theme of bringing women to the forefront, especially women in politics, why is that important to you? Why is it significant that we have conversations like this, just even beyond Women's History Month?
Not like a lot of people know this, but I wasn't born in America. I grew up half my life in Australia and then my family immigrated here. And I just think that perspective really taught me a lot about understanding the fact that the whole world isn't run the way one country is, and being able to see how policies in Australia and New Zealand, because they're very like similar and they have very similar systems, see how that works for them versus how things work here. It was like, oh my God, I need to be doing this. It was just, I think the best way for me to put it is like it was an aha moment. I I saw this connection, but I also saw where all these pieces were trying to fit and they just need like small adjustments to fall into place. But beyond that, I just feel like it's so important that we give women a platform. I feel like it's kind of common knowledge. Everyone knows women have been marginalized throughout history, when in reality, we're 50% of the population, give or take. You can't marginalize half the population. It just makes it so important to me that especially women in leadership and in politics are able to step out. Some of my role models are all bold names. They're there for you to look up to, but also they're doing so many things and you can too. I feel like that's why these conversations are so important.
I actually did not know about you not being born here and your upbringing in Australia. That's crazy. So I'm glad we had this introduction, actually. And today we're diving into women in politics. We're so excited to welcome our guests, Amanda Hollowell and Megan Irving Tyler, of course. So let's get started.
Our first guest, Amanda, is the interim chief of campaigns at Color of Change, leading efforts to drive meaningful change through advocacy and campaign strategy. She's held leadership roles at When We All Vote and the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, and is deeply involved in community service, including serving on boards like Reform Georgia and the League of Women Voters of Coastal Georgia. Amanda is a mother and proud member of the Savannah chapter of the Links Incorporated.
And our second guest is Megan Irving Tyler. Megan is the Executive Vice President of Campaigns and Strategy at All Voting is Local, overseeing programs focused on ensuring that every vote counts, especially for marginalized communities. Previously, she led efforts at When We All Vote, managing a $3.1 million voter contract plan for the 2020 elections. Megan's career began as a field organizer on the Obama campaign, and she has since managed numerous electoral races. She's a mother and holds a BA in sociology from Loyola University at New Orleans. Thank you all for being here today. To kick things off, we'll start with 5 rapid-fire questions. These are light, icebreaker-style questions that Anwita and I will take turns reading, so feel free to jump in and answer whenever you'd like. So the first question I have for both of you is, where do you currently call home?
I'll go. I currently call Savannah, Georgia, my home, but I'm originally from Palm Springs, California. But Savannah's my chosen home for almost the last 20 years.
And I live outside of Washington, D.C. in Rockville, Maryland.
Amanda, I have to tell you, I love Savannah. I think it's one of the most effortlessly beautiful cities I've ever been to. So, who's one role model you look up to? Not like a parent or someone in your family, but someone you've interacted with and you feel like you've learned a lot from.
I will jump in and because it may be the same one that Amanda has, although I don't know. But I'll say Michelle Obama has definitely been a steady role model for me. And I think for so many women and people around the world for decades. She inspired me before I even got into politics. And then to have the honor of working with her when we all vote and seeing the passion that she brings to this work was really something that just kept me going and so many others as well.
Ironically, I don't have like Michelle Obama, yes, is a North Star of like how to hold your ish together when there's moments of just absolute ridiculousness. I don't have like someone famous. What I am is doing is learning from a lot of women who are in leadership right now and how they're holding themselves. I mean, like I definitely like a Susan Rice, which is so random, but I just like how diplomatic she is because I'm not. And then I just kind of just been like trying to dig deep. I'm not a Bell Hooks fan, but I want to learn. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm trying to find those like feminist voices and relearn them and really figure out what does direction and mentorship look like for me. But I will say I have an awesome friends group of women who are very accomplished and they are my mentors and they know that because I make them check in with me and ask them a lot of questions.
Yes, I mean, I love a good supportive, just honestly, all girls group chat just elevates my day in so many ways. What is your favorite dish or meal currently?
I love a Maryland crab feast or a Louisiana crawfish boil. I've lived in New Orleans, and so both of those things I love a lot.
I'd have to interrupt you. I'm actually from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Oh,
So,
are you?
yeah.
I lived in New
Yep.
Orleans for like 10 years.
I saw that in your bio. I think you went to Loyola. Is that right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
graduated from there.
Yeah.
I also don't think it's fair because Megan like was like seafood, another palace, seafood, another palace. But we'll roll with it. I mean, I live in the South. I love a good shrimp and grits. You can't go wrong with that. But also my California side brings me to a carne asada taco at least once a week.
I
So
love carne asada taco too. It's a good one.
Nothing tops a good taco. What's like your favorite genre of music to listen to?
I mean, I like all music, and I know everybody says that, but I'd probably say like 90s hip hop or like I think they call it folk pop, which is sort of that like Noah Khan
Yeah.
whiny emotional music.
I am a 80s, 90s rap person, but I listen to gangster rap And then I will swing dramatically and end up in like a Daft Punk cycle for a couple of Zoom meetings. So
Last icebreaker question. Do you have any recommended podcasts, news outlets, or resources for girls aspiring to enter politics?
You know what's really great, and I think it's starting to get the credit that it deserves, but Teen Vogue is an amazing outlet for politics and news, and I just highly recommend it. I would say another podcast that's very wonky, but if you're into elections and election administration, the ELB podcast, which is election law blog podcast, is with Rick Hansen, is also a great one.
yes, on Teen Vogue, like they have come a long way and they're providing so much substance for the girls. Would also say I am in a self-development phase. And so there's this book I'm reading called The Courage to be Disliked, which is very helpful because as we have learned from the political landscape, we are not platforming women to be leaders, nor are we showing what it looks like to have a woman leader. And in that, it is, you have to be strong and grounded that you know that like, though I'm leading and I know I'm right and I know I'm doing the thing that's right for the people, like people are not going to like me. So I'm trying to ground myself in that moment because I'm definitely a people pleaser. I definitely want like,
And it's okay if they don't. Not everybody has to like you, and that's okay. It's something that I'm definitely working on too.
That's good to hear. I know a lot of people, at least like as teenagers, who definitely feel that, but it's good to hear that, other people in your age and in your prime are also dealing with those kinds of struggles as well. So yeah, I mean, it's great to break the ice a little before we dive into a podcast episode. But the first question I have for our more official discussion is, why did you all choose politics as your career? Did you have like this aha or like this light bulb moment that propelled you to become a politician?
I don't know if I would call myself a politician. I'm definitely like politics adjacent. I was thinking about this. My dad was a television news producer when I was growing up, and I remember being a young kid. This had to have been like the late 80s, early 90s, and he came home from shooting a segment overseas, and I remember asking him, "Do you ever stop when you're filming and like try to help these people that you see that are suffering or that are have an issue or if there's a war or what have you?" And my dad said no. He explained to me that a journalist's job was not to be involved. It was to be there and like to film it independently and then to show that to the world. And that was how he was helping. And I just remember being a little kid and being like, that did not sit right with me. And knowing that whatever it was that I wanted to do growing up, I wanted to make sure that I was able to help people directly and as many people as possible. And so then when I came into working in politics as a field organizer on the Obama campaign, I just fell in love with engaging people into the democratic process, but also like building community power at the same time and being able to leave and knowing that you've created something that's going to last and it's going to be benefiting that community for a long time. And so for me, I think that aha moment was when I was very young. My teachers, I remember, once told my parents that I had an outsized sense of justice, and that's probably still accurate. I don't like it when things are not fair.
like what a report. Like
I know.
like, she put that pen to paper and was like,
in a very conservative school system, and I had a lot of thoughts on the way that the church taught about women and about LGBTQ plus individuals. And even at a young age, I made my thoughts about that very well known to my teachers. So yes, my parents got a lot of feedback.
I love that. That's Megan. I love that. I'm not a politician, but I've always been a politician, which is hilarious. All of middle school, I was part of the student body, and then eighth grade, I ran for president. So I was president of my middle school. I went on to be treasurer of my ninth grade, but then I started playing basketball and volleyball. Before I got committed to that, I was in Girl State and I ran for attorney general. And so like, I just always had this sense of caring and thinking about others in a way that was very intentional and inclusive. And so I think the fact that I'm as old as I am, that I've been protesting Clarence Thomas since I was in college. And I was in college when we paid for text messages. And so, and so like that was like my first real protest. And that was at Berkeley, where I went to school, UC Berkeley. And it was a fire was lit from there. And so I've always volunteered and volunteered. It wasn't until like under the last decade and a half that I learned you could get paid for this work. And so, I deeply care. I'm a servant of my community. I deeply care about people. I deeply care about women. And I just really want to see the world like do better, which brings me into this space of like advocacy and civic engagement. But I was recently at a political brunch, which was interesting. It was like a bunch of community members, and the woman got confronted, and they were like, "When are you running for mayor of Savannah?" And I was like, "I don't want to run this city. Like, that's whack. Like, that's the last thing I want to do." You know, everyone has a place and a role, and I think I found my groove, just like I'm sure Megan feels like she's found her groove. And everyone doesn't have to run for office. There's a lot of roles to be played in this process.
I feel like you touched kind of on like being very into volunteering and like the concept of servant leadership. That's like something my parents have always talked about. Like for me, I really relied, especially on my mom, but also one of my teachers at school, my model and advisor. She's basically like my school mom. They like, I feel like it's so important that we're thoughtful about the way we lead, and they both like really brought that to me, and just like making sure everyone has a chance to share their thoughts and beliefs. So this month Girl Up USA is celebrating bringing women to the forefront, and I'm curious if you've had any like key influences or mentors throughout your career.
I've had several. I've had several women who've helped shape me over the years. It was my librarian in middle school who really pushed me to do more and to do harder. It was also my English lit teacher who told me I wasn't good enough, and I was like, "That's fantastic." So I love some discouragement. But then it was like my AP English teacher who let me read and think beyond what was inside the rubric of what we were supposed to be testing on. But I think like the most impactful, I call her my Savannah mama. When I came to Savannah, I volunteered for her. She got me my first job. She platformed me into places that I didn't think I would ever get into. And this woman just, because I said yes to working for her for free, she opened up so much for me. And so I would be remiss not to thank her if I ever get like a real award. Like, but I also think that like I want to model that behavior as a mentor for other people, which is like you see that spark and you just keep pushing them and giving them that opportunity. So Mrs. Shirley James, who's a publisher, a co-bank owner, is my heart. She is the woman who helped me get to where I am.
I love that. And it's so true how much teachers can both really influence you, but then also if they're, supportive, but also the ones that are not supportive that really stick with you and you make sure you're like, I'm going to show them one day. I definitely have one of those too. For me, I think identifying and like building those relationships with mentors is something that I really wish that I had started earlier in my life, in my career, because it would have helped me so much, especially coming into politics and being a first time mom. I really didn't see a lot of women that were at that point, I was managing political campaigns that were doing that and being really public about the struggles that they were having. And I wish that I had had more mentors in order to be at that time, in order to sort of see how they did it and learned from it. So in the same way that Amanda does, being very visible about that right now and finding people, investing in them and being mentors to others is I think so important. I also have been so fortunate to work with a lot of amazing women in politics, and I won't go and like list them all, but I think that if you find someone that you are inspired by, or even if you just think like, wow, I'm really interested to know how they got to where they are, or this person had an idea, really go up to them, take the chance, let them know that you really were moved by what they said and that you'd love to have coffee with them. The worst that they can do is say no. And I would bet money that they'll probably say yes and be willing to help you if you ask.
Yes, I definitely love both of your responses, but I do want to revisit something that Amanda, you said a little bit earlier about how not everyone in politics has to run for office, but and yet we think of female politicians or people in politics as congresswomen, as cabinet members, or in executive leadership positions. So as someone who's involved in more behind the scenes, but of course undeniably necessary positions, how do you suggest that we empower and support more everyday women in stepping into leadership roles and who just want to drive more change in their communities?
One of the biggest problems is that like women always get regulated to outreach,
Field.
outreach, speech writing, PR. And I think it's fighting, it's you really gotta fight for, like Megan has a strong digital background. Like you really gotta fight for those things that they want to just naturally give to a man. Like this is what it is. Like misogyny runs deep in so many places. It is not perfect on the political landscape. And you really need to make sure that when you go into these spaces, one, you have a friend in that room. And so when you start advocating for yourself to do something, you have someone to back you up and agree and like put that gold stamp or know someone already in the room so they can gold stamp you.
Yeah.
Because women get denied in politics, we get regulated real fast.
Yeah, so true. I would say being your own, what is it what they say? Like finding somebody in the room who can lift you up when you're not there is so important. And I will say, like, if recent events have taught us anything, it's that imposter syndrome is a liar. And women like should not listen to it at all. Put in the work, believe in yourself, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and take that chance. Don't listen to that little voice that's in your head or that voice of society or the other people in the room that are telling you you can't do it. Don't listen to it. And I would say act as a mentor and give visibility to the behind the scenes of your life so that other people can sort of see how you're doing it. So for example, like I always put my like I walk my kids to and from school in the mornings and the afternoons. And I always put that on my calendar. And instead of just blocking off, do not schedule, I put like taking my children to school. And I think being able to put visibility to the sort of extra labor that goes into being especially a working mom in politics is really important because it's still there whether you acknowledge it or not, but when you acknowledge it, then it shares it, it makes it's a more of a communal thing and that you can get support in. And it's just so critical to lift other women up. And there's a tendency, I think, or there used to be, and I would say it's actually our generation does it less, but I'd say previous generations, you heard a lot of women who were competing for very few positions. And so it sort of take each other down. And I would say that like our generation was not about that. And so I would encourage future generations to continue to just stand on each other's shoulders, lift each other up. And like that community that you build is what's going to make you succeed as a whole in this business.
Yeah. And also like own the negative, right? Like, so me, myself, and a few of my friends, like we come in and tell you we are direct and we ask questions like off the rip. And because that usually people try to flip that on you that you're weak and you're not a good candidate, you're not a good worker. And you're like, no, I ask questions for clarity. I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking for. I'm direct because I don't have time.
Yep.
It's not that I don't want to do the fluffy stuff, but like I don't have time. Like we are pressed. And so, and I think if you own those moments, it really shrinks people who try to like, disempower you in that moment.
I really like just the way you're like talking about owning things because I totally feel that people are always going to disagree or have something bad to say. And like if you own it, you're going to feel like you're coming out as the better person because obviously hating on someone's not a good thing. And it's so, I feel like just that concept of owning it is something that people don't always remember to do. But as a woman in political affairs in that landscape, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced and how have you navigated?
I mean, I'll say that setting and reinforcing your own boundaries is, I think, probably the biggest challenge that I've had. But I would say that I think most women have in politics in general, but also just in the workplace in general. And that includes boundaries around your time and your capacity, but also boundaries around your integrity, what you are willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And in politics, that is incredibly important because there's a lot of people who will push to win at all costs. And if you're not holding your boundaries, no one's going to do it for you. And so, we have a tendency, especially women in this work, have a tendency to overcommit and say yes, and even when they do not have the capacity to do so. And then that leads to burnout. And we lose so many amazing, passionate, smart people that we need in this movement in politics to burn out because they are not able to set those boundaries and realize that this is a marathon and not a sprint, although politics makes you think that everything is a sprint. And so making sure that you are really, like, you're the only one who's going to reinforce your boundaries. So you have to do it over and over and over again. Someone was just telling me today that you can tell your boundaries to someone, you're going to have to tell them 7, 8 more times. They're not going to remember other people's boundaries. So you have to be the one who's vocalizing them and reinforcing them.
I think owning your power and leadership is hard as a woman because because we fall into the traps, right? Like, so I always have to check myself as I do this leadership stuff because I am quick to be like, I don't want them to hate me. I don't want to be the person that's always bringing the bad news, right? But then I'm also like, you keep messing up. And I gotta hold you accountable. And so finding the balance, you have to lead with trust and accountability. You also have to lead your way, but you also just need to make sure people respect you. And you don't have to curtail your personality or your leadership style to gain that respect and to be cool. You can just lead. And because you've set clear expectations, you've let them know you trust them, you know what accountability looks like for them, they should fall into the fold. But you're always going to get a little pushback. As a woman leader, they will always try you.
Very, very true. Yes.
And I think it's recognizing it first, recognizing it early, and then speaking up about it in the moment. Do not let it build up.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have so much wisdom. It's crazy that being a woman in politics is as difficult as it is, and so many people don't recognize that. I know we touched on, sharing that balance and understanding that there's a difference between, of course, personal and private life between the public and what you don't see behind the scenes, but also like being a first-time mother, maybe finding housing even when you're moving into a new city, raising a family, all these things just kind of go unnoticed, and people don't really know about these when they're entering into a career and a space like this. So, just out of curiosity, this was kind of my own personal question, and I'm sure whoever's viewing or watching or listening to this is also curious. But what does a typical day-to-day life look like?
One of the reasons that I love politics is that every day is different. That was what drew me to it in the first place, was I really loved sort of not knowing what challenge that we were going to be faced with on any given day, and then being able to find solutions to that challenge. As a working mom, I wake up, I get myself and the kids ready to go to work and school. I have an amazing partner, so we really do 50-50 parenting. And so he handles breakfast, he brings me tea every morning, which I really appreciate. And then usually I'll listen to the news, or I'll read articles, or I'll catch up on my emails. Then we walk the kids to school, which is a great way to just sort of set up our day together as a family, but also just like get outside and get some sunshine. And then if I'm working in office, I will drive into DC. Usually I'll take a meeting in the car on the way in, or I'll work, I'll get set up in my home office here. And I will usually have like 4 to 7 meetings a day on average. During election season, that number goes up, which is just not fun, with my team or with external partners. And then there's often like rapid response scenarios that are popping up throughout the day that you're responding to. I will have an hour every afternoon that's blocked off so that I can go through my emails and get down to inbox, not zero, but like inbox close to zero. And then that helps me to sort of separate from like work to home life because it's hard when you're working from home. So then get my emails out, go walk and pick up the kids from aftercare. We will then try to do either it's helping with homework or cooking dinner. I usually do dinners. You know, we have a lot of family movie nights because it is exhausting at the end of the day, and sitting down and watching a family movie together as a family is a great way to bond, in my opinion. And then once we put the kids to bed, and then, you know, maybe if there's more work, I'll do that. But usually I've been trying to leave the work during the day. And so my partner and I will watch something on TV, something fun and stupid that helps to kind of decompress from usually the craziness of the day. We get up and we do it all again.
Yeah, so I went from motherhood to being a full-time caretaker. So my son graduated high school in 2020 and he's in college. And then my father got sick and I moved him in with me. So I didn't take a break. And so, you know, I cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for him. I am in at least 6 meetings
Yeah.
a day. So it's just a lot of like I'm reading and reviewing and responding, and then you're trying to make connection with people while you're in this moment. I think when you get into like leadership positions, you're in so many meetings that the work ends up being after work. And that's crazy hard. And so, you know, it's hard to set those boundaries, like Megan said. But by the end of the night, because we have people on the West Coast, so my night ends around 7.
Mm.
And I'll start around 8. But this is what salary life looks like.
So true.
You know, I'm winding down my partner. He's great. Like the house is clean, the bed is made. I'm ready to go to bed. And, you know, he's like, here's your Monopoly
I love that.
on my tablet. And like, he goes, and the office is playing in the background, go zone out and not answer things. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. But it never fails. My son, who's in college, he's graduating in May, will always text me some kind of Rubik's Cube of a question that he should have taken care of months ago and then put me in like a fire drill. But like other than that, like it's kind of basic. It's not a lot, but I think I am bounded by my calendar. If it's not on my Google Calendar, I am not showing up. It is not,
100%.
it's not happening because I've meticulously gotten that thing right to where I know where breaks are, where I know I have a little leeway, so on and so forth. And so you know, that's usually a typical day. But I feel for the people right now who are parents, who are caretakers. We have a lot of questions to answer in the next couple of months about our children's care, about our loved ones' care, who's providing for that, who's going to step in, and like where do we fill those gaps for people in our communities? It's nothing crazy or exciting.
There's a lot of laundry on the weekends. It's like the worst part about being a working adult, I would say.
A lot of laundry. There's like, you know, I'm also like, I'm a football mom. And so like 3 months out of the year, every weekend I'm gone doing football. And so I don't literally like get like the rest that I'm supposed to get. I'm a Severance fan. And one of my staff members, he was like, how do you have time to watch all this TV? And I was like, I don't sleep.
I am trying to be better about sleeping. That's been my goal this year. I'm working on it.
It's
But
hard. Sleep
it
is
is
so
hard.
hard because you have to relax to sleep. I'm not relaxed. So
Brain's always sort of thinking about, okay, what's on the calendar for tomorrow? What do the kids have? Is there a spirit week? You know, what do I have to help dad with? Like just all of those things. And, you know, did we do the grocery shopping yet? No, I didn't have to go to order that. It just you know, yeah, it's hard to turn that all off and rest. But I feel like it's if we don't, same thing about setting our own boundaries, we'll end up paying for it.
right. I mean, if someone like puts a study out there that says like lack of sleep will lead to early dementia, then maybe I'll work harder.
I think that study probably exists.
Shh, Megan, be quiet.
Yeah, Siyeon and I were like just talking earlier about how that work-life balance is so important. And sometimes, like, especially in high school, we're kind of like doing all these things and we kind of forget how important that balance and getting sleep is. So we were like just talking about earlier, we would never be up till like 3 in the morning trying to do homework, right?
It starts in high school.
It's not fun.
So horrible.
Yeah, I
It
remember
definitely
being
starts in
in
high
high
school.
school and staying up so late to finish reading and doing all this and so much pressure. And then it just doesn't stop. And, I hope I look at my kids and would love to figure out a way to to try and stop that because I know it is so important, but at the same time, you're missing out on a lot of
You're missing out on life.
yeah, in
Life.
life.
It's like crazy. Yeah. So, but also like where I used to go to like veg out, I can't go because it turns into work, which is social media.
Yeah.
And it's a drag now. Like I'm just like, and we turn this off. And then my mom will send me something. She's like, "Did you see?" And I'm like,
Yeah, my mom loves to Facebook me. She thinks, bless her heart, she thinks she's just messaging me, but she's just posting stuff on her wall. And I'm like, no, everybody saw that, mom. And then she's like, what? I was like, yeah, no, everybody knows your politics now.
And speaking about like the future and where things are headed, what's you guys' perspective on like the future of like female representation in politics? Like, how do you see it and evolving in the coming years? Why is it and like why is it so important to have women in leadership roles, like both at the national level and on like the grassroots level, working very hands-on with local people?
I'm gonna let Megan go because I need to work on my PC answer.
You
'Cause
keep
right now
throwing
my
me
answer is
out there.
unproductive.
Okay. Well, I'll say one. I think that, I mean, there's studies that show how important women in the workforce are, not just for their own personal gain and success, but for society, for economic reasons. I mean, women in the economic workplace, they not only help women, but they also help men. They enable more benefits, they increase workforce participation, they bring in benefits like paid family leave and just things that benefit both men and women. And so I feel like you cannot have a successful economy, you cannot have a successful society without women in the workforce. I think that in our country right now, we're seeing a really alarming increase in anti DEI rhetoric and policies, both in politics and in the corporate world, that's impacting women and especially women of color. And the backlash against women that we're seeing, it not only threatens our safety, but it also, I mean, it hurts our economy and it hurts our society as a whole. I think we really have to stand up within our communities and fight to ensure that our children have not only the same rights and opportunities that we had, but that they're able to achieve more. I'll say, like, you had told me in high school that I'd be concerned about my daughter having less rights than I would. That would have seemed impossible because at that point in time, like, it really felt like the trajectory was going to keep going up. And, it means not only just like showing up to vote, but showing up and making sure that you are bringing your family and your friends and that your community is also showing up. And not just on election day, but that you're showing up at local board of election meetings, school board meetings, that, you're standing up and you're embracing your community. That idea of being a pillar of your community is something that I just don't think is given enough respect in our society. And, I'm going to say like so much of the behind the scenes, like political work has been done by women of color in this country for so long. And it's time for white women and people from all walks of life to step up and really take ownership for embodying the world that we want to live in. Because the change isn't going to happen unless each one of us is making it happen ourselves.
I think for me, I think there's this amazing moment for women to lead boldly and unapologetically. And it's not a TikTok video. It is actually saying the thing out loud, and showing up. And like, I wish when we had that State of the Union or whatever that was, like a woman would have got arrested and removed from the floor, right? Like that visual would have been so powerful. And so I hope women I hope women in leadership decide to go ahead and put it all on the line. Because at this point, what do we have to lose? Like, like, and
Now.
not just like, like, and everyone should feel that way. And I think we should empower ourselves to be that person who's like, well, what if it's my turn to stand up and say the thing or write the piece or, show up at the meeting. I think this is just this incredible time to just to be as bold as you can. And I hope more women capitalize on this moment and just go crazy because we need it. Like the men's are not doing this thing. They are not bringing it like, like we wanted them to. And I really think it's because they feel like they won't get the support. And this is on the federal, state, and local level. I think women don't do bold moves because they hear more, women hear more of the negative and the backlash versus like, go do it. Go do it, kid. Get out there. I got your back. And we need more of that so these women can make more bolder moves and really say the thing that needs to be said in this moment.
Just before we kind of wrap up with this final question, do you want to share that before I kind of revisited this idea of doing a women in politics podcast episode, I was reflecting on my own experiences, thinking about people in politics that I knew who were women or who looked like me, who had the same representation that I wanted to see. And of course, everyone on this call is actually based in the South, so I'm sure we can kind of relate to this on some level. But my city in Lafayette just elected our first female mayor in like what 2 centuries of being in the
Yeah.
state, and I have yet to see an Asian House Representative member for my Louisiana state legislature. I haven't seen a Korean American or just a Korean state senator yet. I haven't
Yeah.
seen that representation. And so, kind of just to wrap up, do you have any advice for aspiring girls who want to become politicians, who want to do something in the political landscape? What kind of qualities or skills do they really need to pick up to make sure they can navigate what is a really, really difficult and challenging career?
I had to have this conversation with my staff because we do campaign advocacy and issue advocacy, and we represent a lot of members. And I had to tell them because I was feeling some type of way about how we were showing up in the moment. And I said, you better ground yourself in that why.
Yeah.
Because if the why is not real, and if the why is like, I want to be famous, I want to be viral, this actually doesn't impact me, I just want to get published, your work is not going to reflect what you need to do. And you're not going to represent people and go as hard as you can. And it's easy, and Megan knows this too, like it's very easy as you start climbing your way to the top and things get different to lose the why, but the why needs to stay. I think it's a gut check before you go out there and say, like, why am I doing this? Because you're going to risk a lot, you're going to gain a lot, but what is the end goal for you to be a politician or to be in politics? And if it's self-centered, it's only going to go so far and it puts you in some really hairy positions.
So true. I would you've touched a lot on it in this podcast already. I mean, find mentors and professional colleagues who are going to uplift you. Put in the hard work. At the end of the day, like if you're putting in the work, it's going to be recognized, and you're not going to get ahead without doing that, and at least not in an authentic, genuine way. And so, put in the hard work, learn, lead through example, figure out your boundaries and stick to them. That's the hardest part of it, but it will like serve you so well. And then something my dad always told me, which was like, never pass on blame and always pass on praise. So always like take responsibility for your team, but also always make sure like you're shouting out the people that like helped get you to where you are, because that team that's behind you, especially in this business. And I mean, like Amanda and I, like we were a great team together, and like she knows she can always call me and I'll have her back. And like that team is what's gonna be with you through the hard times.
Yeah, I agree that that feeling of connection, I feel like it just always is what takes initiative to like a new level because you're able to rely on people that you can trust. And that's something I've really seen at school too. Megan and Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. This was such a fun conversation, and we really enjoyed hearing from you.
Yeah, and that's a wrap on today's Lead Her Voices episode. This Women's History Month, we're celebrating not just the trailblazers of history, but also the everyday women shaping the future. Let's keep pushing for progress and bringing women to the forefront. Stay bold, stay inspired, and remember to follow Girl Up USA for more. See you next time!